Our pelvis is the largest and the heaviest bone in our body. It's also what we're sitting on when we sit in the saddle. So the way that we sit, the way that we position our pelvis, and of course the way that we move our hip joints are crucially important to how stable we are in the saddle and how comfortable we are as a rider for the horse to carry. I'm Callie. I'm here today with Ellie, one of our star schoolmasters at our farm campus in Pennsylvania. And I want to give you first some more information. We're going to clear up some of the myths about how we really need to sit in the saddle. And then with the demo rider, we'll look at how the position of our pelvis really affects our security. And I'm going to share one super simple exercise that will help you find the best alignment for you in the saddle. So when we're sitting in the saddle, we want to be sitting on the widest point of our sit bones. You can kind of feel this if you rock a little bit forward and back. When you go forward, you'll find that you lose that contact of your sit bones. If you go too far back, you end up just sitting more on the big butt muscles and you lose that contact as well. So you're looking for that place where you feel the contact and that wide part of your sit bones. When we sit on the widest part, it gives us the most security. Now, depending on how your saddle fits you, you may feel what's called a 3-point seat. And this is where you also feel the contact of the rise of the saddle on your pubic bone. So this is what creates that 3 points of contact, the 2 sit bones and the pubic bone in the front. But you don't want to search for this because if you're trying to find this 3-point contact, you might end up coming too far forward. So when we're sitting in the saddle, generally speaking, we want our pelvis to be in what's called neutral. And this is basically where the frontal points of the top of the pelvis and the pubic bone are in line with the frontal plane of the body. That sounds complicated. Basically, it just means that we're not tipping the top of the pelvis too far forward. This is called an anterior tilt. And this creates this hollow back position. And we'll see in a moment why this is really insecure. We also don't want to have too much of a posterior tilt. And this is when we try to lean too far back in the saddle, or sometimes when we come back here to try to find too much of a deep seat. Depending on what we do with the rest of our body, this can actually be pretty insecure as well. So we want to find, again, sitting on the widest points of the seat bone with our pelvis generally in neutral. And again, there's some little exercises that'll help you find exactly where this is for you. And I'll share that little test in a moment. So from here, when we move our pelvis, it changes the angle of our hip. Oftentimes, hip angle, and when you hear instruction to open your hip, is misunderstood as doing this and taking your knees off the saddle and like widening your legs. But that's not what it means to open the hip angle. The hip angle is from our thigh to our pelvis. So this is the angle. If I come forward, I'm closing the angle. If I'm in jump position, if I'm galloping cross country, if I'm just in a light seat cantering around, I'm closing my hip angle. If I'm opening my hip angle, I'm bringing the top of my pelvis back. Now I'm not just slumping my body. I can keep a flat back and a good alignment and open chest and open my hip angle this way. And I might come into this position if I'm riding on a trail and all of a sudden the trail is going around a turn and I think my horse might shy at something there. I might come into this position if I'm coming into a combination of fences and I want my horse to have a really bouncy canter, a more collected canter. I might come into this position if my horse is getting a little squirrely and I want to have more of a defensive seat. These are all times where we might open the angle of the pelvis slightly. So now I want to bring in another rider so that I can show you again what this looks like when we're changing the position of our pelvis and how that aligned position makes such a difference in your security. Now I'm here with Jasmine, with Ellie, and with the plastic pelvis to do a little demonstration of these different positions and why they matter. So first, can you go ahead and show us rotating the top of your pelvis forward? So as Jasmine takes the top of her pelvis forward, if we could see the pelvis in the movement, it would look something like this. So it closes this angle at the hip joint and it creates this hollow in the lower back. Now go ahead and take the top of your pelvis really far back. So again, here she rotated this way, it opened the angle here, and it created this rounding through her lower back. So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna do a few exercises, like a few little tests to help you feel where you're most secure and where maybe you're a little bit less secure. And these are really good that you can do on your own, in your own riding as well, even if you don't have a riding instructor to help. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and go back to that pelvis coming forward. Top of the pelvis coming forward. So again, this creates this hollow back. This is something that's really common. A lot of riders think that this is a good position for posture. You know, if we're told to put your chest out and stick your hip bones out and sit pretty on the horse, we can end up in this kind of a posture. But I think you'll notice, and I think you'll feel, it's not real secure. So I want you to hold on to the reins. Go ahead and bring your hands up just a little, just normal riding position. I'm gonna pull and try not to let me pull you. So feel how much you're able to stay secure. Okay, I'm gonna pull. Try harder. And actually, the more that you tense to try to steady yourself, the more easier it is for me to pull you. Okay, now go ahead and go back into the other position. And I want to add something to this. So we talked earlier about how a lot of times riders think that we need to tuck our pelvis and that we need to keep the abs and the core really tight to stay solid. So I want you to try that. Think tuck your pelvis. That's going to take the top of your pelvis a little more back. Tighten your abs up and see how secure it feels this way. So a little more secure than the last time, but I'm still able to lift you out of the saddle. Okay. Now we're going to go through, we're going to help Jasmine find where she's really aligned through her pelvis, and then I'll pull again and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so I want you to think first about just breathing into this space here. It's helpful with my hand here. You can think about kind of filling out your back in this place where my hand is. You can think about this also in like the waistband of your pants or your belt, if you're wearing a belt. Filling up that space brings your breath a little lower, and you might feel like right there, the top of your pelvis came back, but it wasn't from tucking. It wasn't from making your abs tight. Good. So a little change, but I want you to just stay right there. Keep thinking about breathing into that space. Do the same thing. Okay, and how secure do you feel this time?
Very secure.
And there's a big difference when I pull. So a simple thing, but it really makes a difference. And you probably didn't notice a huge change. Jasmine just changed where she was breathing. She let the top of her pelvis come back slightly, so it brought her into alignment. Okay, so I'm back. As we went through the initial talk here, as you watched this little demo with Jasmine, you probably already saw some of the mistakes that riders make. We talked about making that pelvic tilt when riders try to make their abs really tight and think that tucking their pelvis is the right position. Some riders have been taught that, you know, sitting pretty in the saddle and sitting up really tall like this with the chest out is the right position. And even with those little tests, I hope you saw how those can actually make us more insecure. But there's one more thing that I wanted to cover, and this is the movement of our pelvis in the saddle. So sometimes it's taught or it's misunderstood that the rider needs to scrub the saddle with their movement, that they need to push the horse to keep them going. This can happen sometimes with horses that don't have a lot of forward impulsion, that tend to be lazier horses. But what happens when we're scrubbing the saddle and we're making all this extra movement with our pelvis as we're riding is two things. One, we actually encourage the horse to drop their back, because from all that extra movement, it's not very comfortable for the horse. So they'll tend to drop their back out, and it can actually make them go slower and not have the free forward movement that we're looking for. So we've got a lot of other resources here on how to better use your aids to encourage your horse for forward movement. So know that it's not just the position, but it's also how you're moving. And when we are in good alignment, it really makes such a difference for our horses, because they can move more freely, and not only are we more secure, but our horses are more comfortable as well. One final thing, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Put a comment down below and just tell me one part of your riding posture that you would love a new exercise for, or that you would love to improve. If you want more riding tips like this, but want to go even deeper and create a foundation of skill in your riding that allows you to be confident and effective and honestly more connected with your horse, understanding how riding goes beyond just how we sit in the saddle, but how we really communicate with our horse. So if you're interested in taking a deeper dive, I would love to have you join me in my balanced riding course. You can learn more down below, and I'd love to have you as a student there.